Our approach to the issue of discipline is rooted in our understanding of empowerment. We've got this view that says if you want to empower somebody to fish, the first thing you have to do is you've got to give them some means to fish. You've got to give them a hook, a line, a sinker, in other words, the tools, the resources, the authority and the information. You've got to make the person able to fish. You need to teach them how they should fish and why they should fish. And then finally, if you've done all of those things and the person doesn't catch a fish or refuses to catch a fish, it doesn't help you to then offer them one from your freezer. The last thing you've got to bring to the party is you've got to hold the person accountable. You've got to say to them, look, if you don't catch a fish after this, starve. We can follow exactly the same logic if you're considering the issue of empowerment at work. Further to this, however, when one looks at the issue of accountability, our view is that you can't hold anybody accountable for anything if there isn't a clear standard for what's required of them, which suggests that somebody's performance is either above standard or it's below standard. And if they've gone the extra mile above standard, you should reward them. If they're careful to meet the standard, you should recognize them. If they're below standard because they deliberately choose not to meet the standard, in other words, they're malevolent, we're saying we should punish the person. And in organizations speak today, that means you dismiss the person. And finally, if the person is careless, you should censure the person, you should warn the person. There's clearly a dividing line in this instrument that suggests that you can't hold somebody accountable for something if you've not given them the means or the ability to do what's required of them. That's kind of unfair, which suggests that in the process of empowerment you can make one of two mistakes, a hard mistake and a soft mistake. The hard mistake is concerned with treating means and ability issues as if they are accountability issues. So, for instance, the person doesn't have the means to do what's required of them, or they're not able to do what's required of them. No surprise, the performance is below standard, and you then censure or punish the person. I mean, that's just too harsh. The soft mistake is the opposite. It's to treat accountability issues as if they are means and ability issues. So the person has all the means to do what's required of them. They're perfectly able to do what's required of them. Their performance is below standard, and you go and teach the person something else. You give them some more means, or you do some coaching with the person. Now, of these two mistakes, the hard mistake and the soft mistake, actually our view is that the soft mistake is infinitely worse than the hard mistake. And the reason for this is that it's the equivalent of leaving the rotten apple in the barrel. And secondly, it produces an incremental growth of control. If you aren't holding people accountable who are stepping out of line, the only way that you can make sure that things don't go wrong is if you, from this point forward, start introducing more and more controls. So our view is this is all a question of intent. The intent that produces the soft and the hard mistakes is an intent to remediate the problem. In other words, to fix an outcome. Whereas the intent that protects one from both the soft and the hard mistakes is the intent to be fair. This fairness in discipline is concerned with the intent to censure carelessness and punish malevolence. So you assume you're a judge and you're presented with three cases. The first person took the post because she's a kleptomaniac. And clearly if you wanted to fix or remediate the problem, you'd send the person for psychological treatment. The second person took the post because her husband is hungry. And clearly if you wanted to fix that person, you'd give the person a welfare grant. So the final person took the post because they were lying next to hers and they looked exactly the same. In other words, she made a mistake. And if you wanted to fix this, you'd buy the person spectacles. Now, our view is that actually all of these are inappropriate. If you should exercise discipline in these three cases as the judge with the intent to be fair, you would punish the first person because she took the purse deliberately. You'd punish the second person because she took the purse deliberately. You'd censure the third person because she had been careless. So if we applied our empowerment instrument, therefore, in dealing with performance and discipline, we would ask ourselves, was what the person did unacceptable or below standard? If this is the case, we need to first ask ourselves, well, was this a means issue? And if it is a means issue, obviously we provide the means. Then secondly, we ask ourselves, is it an ability issue? And if it is an ability issue, you would enable the person. But finally, you would then conclude that in fact it is an accountability issue and you would therefore censure or punish the person, the only distinction you would still make is you would ask yourself, was what the person did careless, in which case you would censure them, was what they did malevolent, in which case you'd punish them or dismiss them. How this disciplinary conversation would look was that you'd start off with explaining to the person what you've observed and why it is unacceptable to you, and you indicate why you think it is not a means or an ability issue. You would then ask and listen openly to the reasons that the person offers for his or her behavior, and you would summarize your understanding. You would confirm what is at issue. Now, because you've taken feedback from the person, you're quite open to the fact that you might actually be dealing with a means or an ability issue. So in the case of a means issue, you would then agree on a remedial plan to address the means. In the case of an ability issue, you'd agree on some sort of a coaching plan. Whereas in the case of carelessness, you would censure the person and indicate what further action would be taken and why if the performance or behavior doesn't improve. Finally, in the case of malevolence, you would dismiss the person.